Chapter 281 Triton, 6. Walk. Bentik felt like he was possessed by a ghost. He remembered that both of them had dug their sword and spear into the other's hearts, and they were fighting over who would kill the other first, but why? Why was he the only person with his heart pierced? You've done something. Bentik's spear was inside Yeon-woo's right chest. Its location was only slightly changed, but Yeon-woo was still able to avoid danger. Yeon-woo felt like his body was dropping. The reason why he had been able to hang on with demonic magic and regeneration was because of the magic power in the Philosopher's Stone. However, Time Foresight used all that magic power at once, so he couldn't use it unless it was of crucial importance. The future that Yeon-woo had gained was 5 seconds. It was short, but it was important in the fight for life or death. Thanks to that, Yeon-woo was able to see the timing of Bentik's spear coming at him, and instead of avoiding it, he turned his body slightly to change the direction of the spear. Then, his sword had pierced Bentik's heart even more accurately. The heart was the source of life. It provided blood to the body and created magic power. If a heart broke, it was fatal to normal players. However, as skilled as Bentik was, he had the energy to endure even if his heart was broken. The holy power held him up, even though it was almost gone. Kahal halhal. Sure. Everyone has their secret weapon. Even in this futile situation, he beamed brightly. He didn't look wronged at all. Every player had an ace up their sleeves. Hiding it and using it at the appropriate timing was even more amazing. The saying, to hide 30% of your power, wasn't for nothing. And from Bentik's perspective, Yeon-woo was clever. Even though he was a beast, he wasn't moved by his instinct. He was the type to calculate how he was going to hunt. He was different from himself, who always fought by instinct. But a fight with such a person was still a nice thing, and Bentik felt refreshed. He liked this feeling. The joy of fighting. And the understanding that came after. Stepping into a new world was an overwhelming experience that he couldn't explain. It was also one of the reasons he couldn't stop fighting. And so don't be wronged. Bentik couldn't die here. The same goes for me. Grib. He brutally held onto Vigrid's blade. His fingers were cut so deeply that they were almost cut off, blood dripping down the blade. Yeon-woo tried to push Vigrid in even deeper. However, Vigrid didn't move at all, like it was stuck. Bentik's grip was unbelievably firm. It was a strength that someone who was losing the last of his life force shouldn't be able to muster. Because he hadn't seen anything like this before, Yeon-woo slightly frowned. What is this? The Time Foresight was a skill that depended on the unique skill of the pocket watch and used the calculating ability of the draconic species to predict the future. Even though it gobbled up magic power, it had never failed. It was always risky, but Yeon-woo had always been victorious. However, there was something that Yeon-woo hadn't been able to think of. When the fatal attack that Yeon-woo gave wasn't fatal, what should he do after that? With his magic power and health at their lowest, Yeon-woo was in extreme danger. Yeon-woo squeezed out more magic power from the Philosopher's Stone. His cores overheated again. The source sealed inside him might be released, and he could have been infected by the demonic energy, but he didn't have time to worry about that now. The hand that gripped Vigrid was the same. It couldn't be pushed or pulled away. Bentik suddenly threw his spear away and grabbed Yeon-woo's face. You amused me with this fight, so I think it's okay for me to die like this. But I'm sorry, you're gonna have to be the one to fall, not me. Yaa. A new energy was growing from within Bentik. It was an energy that shined navy blue. It wasn't magic power or holy power, but it was the source of the power that allowed him to endure his heart being broken. At first, it seemed like that power that he had before he was melted by the fire column. Did he have something other than Triana's authority that he kept hidden? I'm the ruler king. I can't lose. Cha Jeong-woo and Lana fell because they lost. I don't plan on following in their footsteps. He put more force on his right hand that was holding Yeon-woo's mask and head. Yeon-woo grit his teeth at the pain of his skull being crushed. Just then, the grid pushed forward slightly. Bentik's left hand was cut off. Would his mask break first, or would Vigrid finish piercing his heart? Snap! The mask couldn't take the strain any longer and began to crack. Small pieces fell to the floor. So die! Bentik smiled cruelly and put more force on his right hand. Half of Yeon-woo's mask fell off, and half of his face was revealed as the pieces fell down. In that moment, Yeon-woo suddenly let go of Vigrid. Instead, he pulled out the magic bayonet from the subspace and aimed for Bentik's chin. He was just about to push it in, when... Clang! Something suddenly fell from the sky and landed between Yeon-woo and Bentik. Bentik's right arm was cut off, the magic bayonet was flung away. Both of their attacks being reduced to nothing, the wind that had landed between them wrapped around Yeon-woo and Bentik. The wind that wrapped around Yeon-woo became a tall man. It was a middle-aged, one-armed man with a giant bastard sword. However, his aura was more powerful than when Bentik held Triana. Things would have been bad if I was just a little late. The middle-aged man looked at Yeon-woo in his arms. Like what he said, Yeon-woo was extremely weak right now. His health and magic power were low. It was a wonder that he didn't collapse or die right now. Yeon-woo widened his eyes seeing the person who saved him. It was someone who shouldn't be here right now. They hadn't even met before. The aura coming from the middle-aged man was enough to make him shiver. He felt more dangerous than Bentik. Duke Ardbad. He was the man who symbolized the power of the four guards of the Gluttony Emperor. Why was the man who led the Bloodlands army against the Walpurgis Nacht here? Thankfully, his mask had restored itself already and was covering his eyes. It seemed like the Duke hadn't recognized him. If he did, Yeon-woo would already be dead. Arthea was also the Bloodlands enemy. Why did you save me? His Majesty ordered me to bring you with care to the Bloodland. Your promise of meeting him still hasn't been fulfilled, and the Emperor wants to see you. Yeon-woo almost burst out laughing. So that was his excuse for wanting to taste dragon meat. It was definitely something the Gluttony Emperor would do. He laughed emptily, seeing that his image within the Bloodland was still holding up. However, Duke Ardbad seemed to have thought it was a grateful laugh because he nodded with a faint smile. Rest for now. I know what kind of situation you're in, so I don't plan on forcing you to our country. You're His Majesty's friend. How can I be rude in serving you? Of course, Yeon-woo wouldn't really let his guard down just because he said that. Rather, he observed Duke Ardbad even more sharply. Unlike his mind, his body could probably take a rest. His exhaustion was extreme. It was a shame he couldn't end Bentik's life, but the other side couldn't continue the fight either. Jinrang. You know I don't like this kind of stuff. Bentik frowned as he looked at Jinrang, who had saved him. He wanted to strangle his subordinate for ruining the mood, but he didn't have any strength left to do that. Jinrang was expressing his will to save his king even if he would be punished for it later. Swa! Jinrang poured holy power inside Bentik's cut arm so it could heal. Normal players couldn't deal with holy power. However, there was only one reason why Jinrang could use it. It was because he was also an apostle. Orion, the god of constellations, who was known as Poseidon's son. Jinrang was the third captain of Triton acting as Orion's apostle. The captains of Triton were watching Duke Ardbad from faraway places. They were ready to attack any second. You just said so. That we can't lose in the end. So I saved you, sir. Bentik's face crumpled at what Jinrang said. Are you saying I would have lost? You might have won the battle but not the war. You cannot defeat Duke Ardbad in your current state. I'll be punished for it later. Please rest for now. Before Bentik could say anything more, Jinrang chopped his neck. Bentik collapsed. Confirming that Bentik was still alive, Jinrang sighed in relief and became wary of Duke Ardbad again. He had stepped up to save Bentik, but the situation at hand wasn't good. Duke Ardbad raised the heavy sword in his left hand like it was nothing and laughed coldly. I did hear that some dregs bothered our subordinates here, so we were planning on fighting you soon. I didn't imagine that we would get a chance like this. The 8 large clans thought it was ridiculous how people said that the new emerging clans were becoming as strong as them. But they also considered the emerging clans annoying, so they were thinking of moving them out of the way. The reason why they hadn't been able to step up was because Triton's blessing from Poseidon was powerful. It was tricky to deal with Triton, made up of Poseidon and his followers Apostle, and Bentik was someone that Duke Ardbad acknowledged. But with Bentik in such a poor state now, he considered it the perfect time to attack Triton. Of course, it would be hard to ruin them completely, but it would be a great gain just to reduce their numbers. Also, nothing bad would come from getting rid of Jinrang, who was famed for his intelligence as much as his martial arts. But as if they weren't going to step down easily, Jinrang also glared at Duke Ardbad. He might be less skilled than Bentik, but it wasn't by a large margin. Rather, in some aspects, he was equal to Bentik. 2 apostles who were as skilled as him were aiming for Duke Ardbad right now. He believed that with the 3 of them, they would be able to take Duke Ardbad's life. Just when Duke Ardbad and Jinrang were about to collide. I see many familiar faces. A loud voice rang out in the sky, and the air around them changed. It was an oppressing power that forced down the mighty presence of Duke Ardbad and the holy power of Jinrang and the others. Strong winds blew, and the waves tossed. While the river of souls was shaking violently, Yeon-woo, Duke Ardbad, Jinrang, the rest of Triton's forces, and the players on the ghost ship looked up at the sky with shock. Just then, the sky split, and someone slowly came down. The savage combative energy left them breathless. A woman with cold eyes, the horn of the one-horned tribe, and the scales of a half-dragon. Duke Ardbad stiffened upon seeing her face. The Spring Queen. The leader of the White Dragon, Waltz. It was an unexpected descent. Chapter 282 Triton, 7. The sudden arrival of the White Dragon's leader made everyone freeze. She was so high in the air that it was hard to see her face clearly, but the presence she gave off was so great that everyone felt like she was right in front of them. In fact, she felt as big as the long-extinct giant species. Duke Ardbad gripped his giant bastard sword. His head was jumbled. From what he knew, the Spring Queen shouldn't have been here. The White Dragon was in the middle of a war with the Elohim, who were trying to take over the 76th floor. The Bloodland and the Sea of Time were getting rid of the forces and bases of the White Dragon on the floors below. The White Dragon had their hands full because of attacks on all fronts. The contribution of the Spring Queen on the battlefields was outstanding. Thanks to her, the battles on the 76th floor had become quiet, but not enough for her to have her eyes somewhere else. Seeing the atmosphere hazing around Waltz, Duke Ardbad narrowed his eyes. It's not. Waltz was separated from space like a being that shouldn't be here. A shadow, is it a primeval body? Duke Ardbad's eyes widened when he realized Waltz's identity. A primeval body. When the energy inside a person was purified, their body would return to its primeval state. As the body got stronger, only the purest form of what you were born with would remain. It was the peak of internal cultivation of those who could create shadows. Actually, this concept originated from the one-horned tribe, so there weren't many who knew about it. This was only knowledge that Duke Ardbad had found out coincidentally because of his deep interest in martial arts. However, there was one thing he was sure of. If she was someone who had a primeval body, it meant that she had exceeded the level of Arhat, and the fact that she was here meant she's definitely planning to get rid of us. Duke Ardbad lifted his sword in front of him. Waltz's primeval body dashed through the air and reached his position in an instant. Kwaong! The collision of the two caused shock waves to spread out around them. Waves tossed violently. Duke Ardbad pushed Waltz away, even while feeling the pain of his entire body being destroyed. He signified a dauntless strength. Just considering brute strength, he was confident he could win against the real Waltz. His trait was powerful enough to drag mountains out of the ground. This was what made him a natural warrior from his younger days. Being defeated by a mere shadow was humiliation that he couldn't handle. Also, it was obvious what Waltz was after. Yeon-woo. She wanted the hoarder, who ended the Summer Queen's life. However, he couldn't let the precious friend of his king be given over to those ruffians. Pew 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 pung. While Duke Ardbad was clashing with Waltz's primeval body, the sork of this content nov. L. by N. Everyone. Retreat. Jinrang threw open, speaking out to his subordinates. Bentik would be furious once he woke up, but it was a relief that it ended here. He couldn't imagine the damage they would receive if they went against Duke Ardbad. Even if it's only a shadow, since the Spring Queen is here, it won't be easy for their side either. It would be nice if both of them were destroyed here. Jinrang looked at Duke Ardbad and Waltz's battle until he got onto the captain's ship and quickly left the sea area. His crew followed the captain's ship and retreated too. 30% of the original ships were sunk, and the ships that were left over all had signs of intense battle. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kwang. Coke. Duke Ardbad grit his teeth at the shock that was delivered through his sword. It was unbelievable that a mere shadow had this much strength. However, what annoyed him was the experience that came down his blade. It was the skill that toppled groups who dared to attack the one-horned tribe. Waltz used experience easily. Every attack and move she made had experience embedded within it. Because of this, even though Duke Ardbad blocked Waltz's attacks, he was receiving internal injuries by the second. He might have looked fine on the outside, but his insides were a mess. Also, he was trying to fight while protecting Yeon-woo, so it was even harder. Was this all I amounted to? Duke Ardbad ground his teeth. Recently, his confidence when fighting had gone down. His arm was cut off by Tom, the leader of the Black Dragon, who was an 81I at the time, and now, he was being defeated by Waltz. Though Waltz was powerful enough to fight against 3 senators of the Elohim at the same time, her shadow couldn't match her actual power. The Duke, who had believed that he was the most powerful player in the tower other than the 9 kings, was jealous. However, he held on. His eyes were bloodshot, but he controlled his complex thoughts. Right now, he had to focus on how he was going to save Yeon-woo. As a servant of the Emperor, it was his duty to carry out his orders, to bring his Emperor's friend with care. He had to find a way somehow. It doesn't seem like it'll end anytime soon. Waltz just clenched her fists again, not giving him a way to escape. Then there's nothing I can do except kill you. I didn't think about deepening our conflict with the Bloodland, but it'll be nice to get rid of a duke here while we're at it. She spoke in a composed manner, like she was talking about the weather. That was how much her primeval body dominated over Duke Ardbad. Duke Ardbad caught his breath and tightened his hold on the sword. If there wasn't a path, he had to make one. Just when he was about to release his secret weapon. "Can you hear me?" A stream of wind blew over to him and a voice settled near his ear. "If you can hear me, don't answer and blink instead." Fitting of a person who spent time on the battlefield like it was his home, he didn't express anything. The Spring Queen might catch on, so I'll be quick. It was Heidi, the elf who moved with Yeon-woo from the 27th floor. He didn't know if he could trust her, but this wasn't the time to be worried about that. Furthermore, what she said was simple. To stall for time. He didn't have the confidence to defeat the shadow in front of him, but he could do that much. Just then, Waltz's primeval body moved. KW, Kwang. Waltz crashed through the ground. Her body spun like a top as she stretched her fist out. Experience whirled around her fist and covered Duke Ardbad. Now! Duke Ardbad tossed Yeon-woo from his arms into the river water. With a splash, he sunk down, and Waltz's face had defeat on it. She hadn't imagined he would throw Yeon-woo away here. Spirit! Waltz belatedly realized Duke Ardbad's trick and tried to rush over in that direction. However, Duke Ardbad ran at her and brought his sword down. Waltz barely blocked the sword with her arms. His blade was right at her neck. Duke Ardbad smiled coldly for the first time since the fight. "Where are you going? Shouldn't you hang out with me? You dare!" Waltz twisted her body, her purple eyes flashing. Experience exploded around her. If he was holding Yeon-woo, he couldn't have avoided the attack, but since there was nothing to hind him now, he released the strength he was holding back with an explosive breath. Mountain-moving emission. His signature skill that stemmed from his trait pressed down the atmosphere around him. Waltz's face hardened for the first time since the fight. Kwa kwa kwang. Waltz's face became stiff as she blocked the attack with her arm. There were small cracks along her arm. Her outer skin, which wasn't affected by most attacks, was beginning to break. That was how powerful the Duke's attack was. The Duke swung his sword again, and Waltz had to reflect his attack using Baikbo Shingguan, a type of Muzhong. Pyong! When another column of water soared up from the shock wave, Yeon-woo was quickly moving towards the ghost ship, surrounded by an iridescent being. Heidi was standing on the ghost ship, controlling the spirits. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Heidi had already used most of her magic power protecting the ghost ship, and it wasn't easy bringing Yeon-woo over from Waltz and Duke Ardbad's battle. "Heidi! It's almost here. Hold on a little longer." There was nothing Dylan or June could do to help their comrade, so they just cheered her on. When Heidi had first made the decision to save Yeon-woo, they were strongly against it. They wanted to escape from the battlefield like Triton had when Waltz appeared. There were the cannibal monster humans on the ship who were bound to Yeon-woo, but there were only old and young beings left, so they could get rid of them easily. However, Heidi shook her head firmly and shot their opinions down. "And if we do? If we throw the hoarder away, what makes us different from the people who went over to Triton?" Dylan, June, and the rest of the players on the ghost ship couldn't say anything. The person who had saved them from being used by the 92nd Squad and given them a spot of his ship was Yeon-woo. There was a price for it, but actually, there was no need for Yeon-woo to go that far. It was all out of goodwill. It was Heidi's belief that if someone acted out of goodwill to her, she had to return the favor. That was why Heidi tried to save Yeon-woo even while her body felt like it was being crushed under the pain. "I'm different from father. I'm going to show that I'm different." Heidi's eyes turned red. The arteries in her eyes popped, and the blue veins under her pale skin bloated like they were going to pop any moment. Her hair turned silver as a result of the magic power use, but she continued to pull Yeon-woo toward her. "Heidi, you!" Jun's eyes widened when he saw Heidi. It was a side of her that he had never seen before, but there were things about her appearance that he had heard about in passing. Silver hair and blue eyes. An elf like that, they symbolized one of the most powerful families within the High Elves. But they were destroyed a long time ago. However, June didn't continue his thoughts for long. Yeon-woo, who was wrapped around a barrier, had popped out from under the water and was reaching the ghost ship. The players looked relieved. "It's there." Suddenly, Dylan, who had been watching Duke Ardbad and Waltz's fight, shouted. Heidi stiffened when she turned to look. A strange phenomenon she couldn't believe was happening. Check-esh. Something suddenly floated up behind Waltz and took on the form of a human. Split shadow. The primeval body was the purest form of energy concentration. If you could control it, you could also split it apart. The Duke tried to stop it, but it was too late. "The sail! Open the sail!" As soon as Yeon-woo got above deck, Heidi shouted urgently. The players moved frantically. The sail was spread open, and the wind spirits began to blow their winds on the sail. The ghost ship moved rapidly down the river water. However, Waltz's shadow was faster. Swag. Chapter 283 Triton, 8. S. Faster. More. I can't go faster than this. S. It was a mess above deck. The ghost ship was moving faster than it had ever moved after entering the 28th floor. The wind spirits blew their whines behind them, and the old cannibal monster humans were rushing around. It was a fast speed that most boats would never have been able to catch up with, but Waltz was easily gaining on them. At first, she was only a small dot, but now they could see her body clearly. Pung. The players fired the cannons in warning. The cannonballs flew at Waltz with the magic power and skills of the players, but Waltz just brushed them off like they were flies. Quang. The cannonballs exploded in the air like that. Explosions rang and black smoke spread out. Waltz passed through it all. SS. It was a scary appearance for the players and the cannibal monster humans. To them, Waltz looked like an invincible disaster. It was understandable because Waltz had a crumpled face, exuding an immense aura. With the arrogance of the one-horned tribes and the dragon fear that only a half-dragon could have, she was ruling as the new fear of the tower after the Summer Queen. Of course they would be scared because such a being was flying at them. At this rate, they would sink into the river of souls along with the boat. Then, they would become like the ghosts that floated around in the river. They were at a loss for what to do. Still, Heidi didn't give up. Blood was streaming from her mouth, and her hair was turning from silver to a dry white, but she continued to move the ship. Looking at her, Yeon-woo slowly got up. He had fainted in Duke Ardbad's arms earlier and now regained some of his consciousness. His body was being healed. However, his energy wasn't completely restored yet, and his body was heavy, like cotton in water. You can't stand up like that. Heidi tried to stop him from getting up, but Yeon-woo cut her off coldly. Why, did you save me? Heidi didn't answer for a moment. You could have left me behind. Yeon-woo truly didn't understand Heidi's decision. When Waltz's primeval body first appeared, he had first begun to think about how he could get out of his situation. He didn't imagine that he would receive Heidi's help suddenly. He thought that she would have escaped while he was fighting with Bentik. He could understand if it was Fanti or Edora, but he never considered that Heidi would help. That was why he was curious. Why had she saved him? Was it to get something from him or pay back the generosity he showed on the island? It might have been something he should think about when Waltz wasn't following them, but this was an important subject for Yeon-woo. Trust in strangers. It was like a hard assignment that he couldn't find the answer to. Because I don't want to be like someone. Who? Yes. Heidi nodded her head heavily and continued. That's all I can say. Without meaning to, Yeon-woo grinned. The response he had expected hadn't come out. It seemed like she had trauma of her own. Silver hair and those eyes. I guess it might be that. The legendary Frey family who had once ruled over High Elves. They were once called the caretakers of the World Tree, and were closer to godly blood than the One-Horned tribe. However, the tragedy of their family not only led to their demise but also dried up the World Tree. This tragedy might have been the reason why Heidi had such strong beliefs about companionship. However, it was enough of an answer for Yeon-woo. Trauma pushed people into corners, but it could also become the motivation for something new. Trauma made Yeon-woo into what he was today. I suppose I can trust you this once. What? Yeon-woo ignored Heidi and stood up. His body screamed at him, but that pain cleared his mind. He could feel that he had been arrogant. He thought that most players would be easy to defeat, but that wasn't the case. He was glad to be presented a challenge. The beast that was unleashed inside of his heart, the monster, had grown, and it was freer than before. Of course, he wouldn't have let himself be swallowed by the monster. He left his body to the monster while his head stayed cold. He released draconic eyes and extrasensory perception at the same time. While he activated time difference, he thought of an escape from this situation. Thankfully, there was a way. A place to protect his body from Waltz's chase. But the problem is how I'm going to lose her and make her follow us there. And I don't know the exact location either. He couldn't think of an easy way to get to that place. He had a destination, but he felt like it was blocked by fog. I still have to try. Obviously, Yeon-woo wasn't planning on fighting Waltz in his condition. Even if she was a primeval body, she was still way more powerful than him. I have to use that path. Beyond the territory of his extrasensory perception, in a sea area not too far away, he could feel a large-scale fleet approaching them at a quick pace. At first, he thought Triton was coming back, but when he looked closely, they were completely different. They looked more like the 92nd Squad than Triton. Yeon-woo thought they might be from that fantasy regiment or whatever they were called. If so, it was a good thing, but even if they weren't, it was obvious they were a pirate crew, so it wouldn't be bad to bring them into this situation. That personality. Shannon muttered to himself reading Yeon-woo's thoughts, but Yeon-woo pretended not to hear it and pulled Vigrid out from subspace. Chwing! The Philosopher's Stone spun with magic power. Thankfully, his overheated cores were working normally after his rest. Soon, Waltz was right on top of them. Gripping Vigrid tightly in his hands, he got into position and swung it down. Wave of fire! Holy fire! 72 Bien Nai, Byuk! Lightning came from the sky as the three skills were combined with the 8 extreme swords. It was an attack with all his remaining strength in it. Kwa kwa kwang! Krrrr! Useless! Waltz's primeval body snorted when it was hit with lightning. As her primeval body was split in two, her strength decreased but not enough to be hurt from that powerless lightning. It was just annoying. Waltz drew her hands in the air. In the shattered space, lightning scattered around her. The broken pieces of lightning landed in the surface of the ground, and a column of water shot up, white steam flowing up. Krrrng, krrng, krrrrrr. However, even though his attack was rendered useless, Yeon-woo continued to bring down fire lightning. Waltz's hands moved faster. Plum flowers blew in the air, and their strong scent wafted around. 20 plum flower arrow. With just a single stroke of her hand, 20 shadows were created, and the space around Waltz was cut as the lightning fell down endlessly. An intense light that was enough to blind people lit up the world. Within it, there wasn't a single lightning bolt that had hurt Waltz. Only a nice-smelling plum flower scent wafted around her. Even in that situation, Waltz's attack didn't let up. She was close enough to the ghost shop to reach them if she leapt into the air. She could see Yeon-woo standing on the head of the boat. Then, flash! Krrrr! Like all the lightning that Waltz had dealt with up to now was condensed, an intense fire lightning rained down on her. Waltz realized this was the last of his strength, and she paused, catching her breath. This wasn't something she could easily cut away. It looked like she would have to break it apart with one blow. Just when she was about to. What? The lightning that looked like it would come down on her suddenly changed direction and fell somewhere else. Waltz didn't know what Yeon-woo was planning and turned her head subconsciously in that direction. At that moment, Waltz could feel that the other primeval body that was connected to her was cut off. The last fire lightning fell on the primeval body that Duke Ardbad was dealing with. Of course, it wasn't that the fire lightning had caught her primeval body. However, it was enough of a surprise, and Duke Ardbad didn't miss the chance that was given to him. He immediately cut the neck of the primeval body. As the primeval body crumbled, its repulsive power was delivered to the Waltz near the ghost ship. Gulp! Waltz unwittingly vomited blood. Her form was fading away. At this rate, her remaining primeval body would be destroyed too. She tried to control it when a portal suddenly opened above her head. You rat-like bitch! Duke Ardbad fell through it, bringing his giant bastard sword down. He had appeared using a teleport scroll. His entire body was bloodied, but his eyes were flaring. His pride was stepped on when she dared to play games with him. Waltz crossed her arms before she could control her body. A blade condensed with magic power fell on her, and the impact of the collision shook the river of souls once again. Then, the fog that had surrounded her suddenly retreated, and she could clearly see around her. Approximately 100 ships were circling around Waltz and Duke Ardbad. They had a symbol of a cross with a sword below it. It was the second squad of the Fantasy Regiment, the Illusion Knightage, who followed Kreutz. The Fantasy Regiment looked surprised at the two who suddenly fell from the sky, but they quickly regained their senses and aimed all their cannons at Waltz. Kwa kwa kwang. The cannons then fired as one. Horde air. Waltz looked for Yeon-woo with a furious voice, surrounded by countless attacks. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Sea Captain. Kreutz nodded at his subordinate's shout. He had frantically rushed here after hearing that Triton, the Bloodland, and the White Dragon were after Yeon-woo, but in the place that he had followed Yeon-woo, he saw a bloodied Duke Ardbad and Waltz. He was greatly surprised by them, but calmly moved and aimed the cannons at them. It seemed like they were chasing after Yeon-woo. It was strange because he didn't see Triton, but more importantly, he had to stall for time for Yeon-woo to escape. Kreutz nodded his silver helm. The secretary next to him shouted at their subordinates. Shoot! Don't leave any of them alive! Poo poo pung! The magic attack created by artisans who had the master qualification flew at Waltz and Duke Ardbad. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Are we out? After escaping the battlefield with Waltz, Duke Ardbad, and the Fantasy Regiment, the passengers on the ghost ship sighed in relief. Plop! Dylan, June, and the rest of the players all sat down on the ground, weak-kneed. Nov, L, by, N, calm. While escaping, they couldn't relax because they thought that Waltz might come back. However, Waltz didn't appear even after an hour passed, and they were able to catch their breaths. Their legs felt wobbly. Their hands were still shaking. Heidi was the same. She just breathed out, leaning on a column. The use of magic power and her spirits pushed her to her limits. Because of that, the silver hair and eyes that she had been hiding were revealed. But it was obvious that she would have become another ghost wandering the river if she hadn't pushed herself this much, so she didn't have any regrets. Also, she was relieved that she was able to make a different choice from her father. Once she caught her breath and calmed down a bit, she lifted her head. Far away, she could see Yeon-woo sitting on the bow of the boat looking at the ocean. After getting away from Waltz, Yeon-woo sat still there and didn't move. He's probably the most exhausted person here. Is he okay? There was no way he was. When he was first carried onto the boat, his condition was critical. But the fact that he didn't let his guard down meant that his mentality was outstanding. Just what kind of life had he led? Heidi wanted to ask Yeon-woo if she could help him with anything, but she couldn't easily approach him in case he would be bothered. She was still hesitating when Yeon-woo suddenly looked over. Their gazes met. Heidi, right? What? Yes. Are you feeling a bit better? Yes. Enough to move around. Was he about to order her to do something? Heidi nodded and burst up. But. Then I'll leave the rest to you. I set the destination, so you don't have to worry about anything. What? Before Heidi could ask, Yeon-woo suddenly pitched forward. She dashed forward to catch him. Thump! Yeon-woo's face fell into her chest. She could feel his heavy and firm body. Kane. Heidi carefully called his name, but there was no answer. When she looked more closely, she saw that he had fainted. She could feel his light breaths. Ah, so he was a human after all. She had thought he was a monster because that was the only side of him she'd seen so far, but that wasn't the case. She felt a bit closer to him. Rest well. Heidi put Yeon-woo's head in her lap so he could rest more easily and stroked his hair. The spirits flew around busily to help him sleep. His hair fluttered in the soft breeze. Their destination was Belux Island, which was probably somewhere nearby. Meanwhile, a monster portent that had wandered away from Yeon-woo snatched something up from the river while swimming. Ki. How happy his owner would be if he saw this. The monster portent already felt good imagining his owner complimenting him. What he found was Bentik's severed right arm. Chapter 284 Island 1. Belux Island was surrounded by multiple defense systems, so it was hard to find its exact location. That was why Yeon-woo had been planning on giving up on finding the island, but he realized that he didn't have to do that while he was fighting Waltz. The seawater charm. It had lost most of its status as an holy item due to the loss of holy power, but it could still do basic functions. Using the option Song of the Sea, Yeon-woo looked for memories related to Beluk. Fortunately, he could find the island's approximate location with it. Yeon-woo thought there was no better place than the island for temporary shelter. It was a fortress that anti-venom Beluk had created with much care. Outsiders didn't know of its existence, so Waltz and Duke Ardbad wouldn't be able to track him. Then, he gave the coordinates he found directly to the cannibal monster humans. He was going to spend some time restoring his broken body for the time being. What a sound sleeper even in this situation. Yeon-woo slowly opened his eyes at the voice ringing in his ears. Where was this sound coming from? He was focusing all his attention on the Philosopher's Stone. But when he got himself together, there was a strange world of stars in front of him. It was a dark world. He didn't know up from down. He felt like his soul would leave his body just by looking at it. In the abyss-like darkness, there was someone there. An ashy form that looked human but had no facial features. There was only a rounded curve on the bottom of his face that looked like a mouth. He was the one who invited Yeon-woo here. The demonism. The monster that had been inside a cage all this time. The beast. Looking at him, Yeon-woo asked, "What is it this time? Why? Can't I call you when I want to? I'm still a part of you. We're like twins. Your little brother wanted to see his older brother, so what's the matter?" Yeon-woo's face crumpled. Wag. An intense wind blew around him. Don't say things so easily with that piehole of yours. Twins? Little brother? Older brother? It was unpleasant to hear the demonism speak about these things. Those were words that no one should say lightly in front of Yeon-woo. The demonism lightly shrugged. Kikikuk. You got so angry just because of a few words. How can people say you're cold and logical after this? Cold-blooded? The trait would cry. Am I right? It was silent. Fine. I got it. I won't do that. Kikikik. The demonism said he was sorry but didn't stop laughing. Yeon-woo debated whether he should punch him in the face, but he quietly retracted his wings of fire. His exhaustion was stacked up from the continued fight with Bentik and Waltz. If he battled the demonism here, it would be detrimental to his mental health. In turn, it would influence his body from healing as well, so he had to hold it in. Instead, he glared at the demonism that was still laughing. Why did you call me here? Oh, this? Oh yeah. I had something to say to you, so I called you. What was it again? Yeon-woo's face hardened again, but the demonism suddenly burst out laughing, slapping his knees. Oh, that's what it was. Kikikik. He covered his mouth as he giggled and spoke with the corners of his mouths, which split violently to his ears. Look. Aren't you too weak? Yeon-woo didn't say anything. The demonism continued to criticize him. I said so before. I would wait until you became ripe. But what are you doing? You have the Philosopher's Stone, the demonic dragon body, Vigrid, you can only do that much even with all that nice stuff? How frustrating, ugh. The demonism shook his finger. You can't do that, okay? Work a little harder. Yet. Just a bit more. Only then. His sharp canines could be seen through his wide-open mouth. They were the teeth of a starved monster. Can I fill my empty stomach? Asterisk asterisk asterisk. What a crazy bastard. The sork of this content nov, l, by, n. Rubbing his temples, Yeon-woo slowly stood up. He felt like his head was going to burst from his headache. Was it an after effect of speaking with the demonism? When his pain settled down, Yeon-woo realized that his body felt lighter than when he fainted. No, it wasn't just lighter. The symptoms, which would disappear only if he was bedridden for a few days, even with regeneration, were healed by 70%. Just then, the words of the demonism right before he was kicked out from his world of unconsciousness echoed in his head. So I'll give you another chance. To work harder. You have to use it well. The demonism was asleep in the Philosopher's Stone, so it had probably unlocked a hidden function of the stone to help him recover. Don't forget. This is the last one. Keek keek. The strange laughter was still ringing in Yeon-woo's ear, and he was irritated by it. But where is this? Yeon-woo circulated his magic power and chased away the traces of the demonism as he looked around. He was lying on a bed. The wooden walls were blank with nothing on them. It was a familiar sight to him. The captain's quarters. Yeon-woo slowly moved the blanket aside and stepped out. As he did, a white fog swept by him. The fog was so thick that it was hard to take even a single step forward. The deck was busy with people bustling around. Lower the sails first. We have to move at full speed from now on. We can't be pulled into the fog. Rope. Where's the rope? I'm turning the ship northeast. Everyone be careful not to fall. Because they were covered by the fog, only their voices rang out loudly. When the bow of the ship turned carefully into another direction, Yeon-woo gripped the rails and activated the seawater charm. With the illusion of his body floating up, he could see below from far up above. Is this the right way? Fortunately, the ship seemed to have arrived at the coordinates. It was actually faster than he expected. The location of the ship was near Baylux Island. This fog was a defense system of the island that activated once you were closer to the island. Baylux wouldn't have done anything to the fog. It was probably to turn any ships around that entered without knowing anything. Usually, ships would try to take a different route if it was hard to see ahead of them. The mighty anti-venom is letting people who invaded his territory leave easily like this. How ridiculous! Or is that how much he wanted to hide this place? Considering his usual personality, he would mix poison into the fog to massacre everyone or capture them alive for experiments. It seemed like he had left it at this because rumors about the area could spread if he did that. That meant that there was something important on the island. If the ship went further, actual defense systems would probably be activated. I should get rid of them ahead of time. He could find most of the defenses with his draconic eyes, so he was going to remove them before they activated. As he slowly moved towards the deck, people turned their gaze towards him, feeling a presence. They all stepped back in surprise. The bustling deck instantly became quieter. Yeon-woo was still a fearsome person to them. Are you feeling all right? Only Heidi urgently ran up to him. Her face looked tired, like she hadn't been able to rest properly. However, without expressing that she was tired, she just looked at Yeon-woo with concerned eyes. Yeon-woo nodded and drew his magic bayonet out from subspace towards the bow of the ship. Gasps could be heard from all around the ship. A few players covered their mouths and quickly ran to the sides. Heidi sighed looking at them. They were acting like that even knowing that Yeon-woo wouldn't hurt them. After all they'd been through, they were still scared of Yeon-woo. But Yeon-woo didn't seem to care as he drew his sword on the bow. Black aura was emitted and then hidden by the fog. She thought he had just grasped at nothing, but the sound of things being destroyed could be heard from far away. Poo poo pung. Yeon-woo looked around again as he put the magic bayonet back and returned to where Heidi was. Call for me when we reach land. Okay. Hearing her response, Yeon-woo went back to the captain's room to rest a little more. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The deeper they moved into the fog, the harder it was to see ahead. The players were anxious, thinking that they might be trapped in the fog forever, but the fog was suddenly swept away, and they could see clearly again. Far away, there was an island. It's an island. Land. Get ready to anchor. They all looked happy to see land. From Triton, Bentik, Dukardbad, and Waltz. They had been through so many things in a short time, and they were desperate to rest on land. And they had found this island. It wasn't the 29th floor, where it was said that there was a new continent, but they were grateful for this place. Also, from where they were, the island definitely didn't look unwelcoming. Unlike how the shore on the island that they had come from was so vast and gloomy, this place had weeds and wild flowers, and the overall atmosphere was bright. Also, there were traces of people. They became hopeful, thinking that it was an island of players who lived on the 28th floor. There was even a port on one side of the island. The ghost ship slowly neared it, and the players finally stepped on firm ground. On Heidi's orders, they moved into groups of 3. Even though they were glad to see land, they had to be on their guards because something could suddenly jump out. There might have been cannibal monster humans as well. The players all received orders to examine the land in sections and scattered. They needed to know the layout and condition of the land first. Yeon-woo got off the boat last and looked around. Looks like nothing from what I saw in the diary is left. Baylux Island was an island that Team Arthea had found together. Memories of it were left in the diary, but other than the landscape, nothing was familiar. Baylux had changed it quite a lot. Yeon-woo entered the island with dark eyes. The inside of the island was even more changed than the outside. The lush forest was now bare, and instead, there were buildings along clean-cut paths. There were even labs, and it looked more like a small city than a village. The players looked surprised at the unexpected sight. It definitely wasn't land that pirates lived on. They wouldn't be able to make a neat city like this. There were arsenals, labs, parks for breaks, and paths to take walks on as well. It was clear that a clan had cleaned this place up. About 1,000 people could stay in this place. However, the problem was that they couldn't sense anyone. There were traces of people using this place just a few months ago. And it wasn't like there were traces of people moving. Each house had unfinished cooking or books left open on tables. If they moved, they would have taken what they needed, but the weapons were left in the weapons room, documents and books were in the labs, and lab papers were laid bare for anyone to see. There weren't any traces of people invading it either. It was like only the people on the island had evaporated. The empty village reminded them of a ghost town, and they shivered. What happened here? The players who had been happy to find land trembled anxiously. Then, they saw a tall spire at the northernmost of the village. The building was familiar, but there was a symbol on it that was slowly being forgotten by the world. Hey? That? Isn't that Arthea's symbol? Yeon-woo, who had been following him, saw the sign as well. It was a symbol of a cross with a sword below it that had wings. This island was Arthea's territory. Yeon-woo heard someone mutter to himself. Under his mask, his eyes hardened. Chapter 285 Island, 2. Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 3/12. Kane. Finding Yeon-woo staring at the symbol on the spire, Heidi carefully called his name. Emotions were swirling in his eyes. Rage, annoyance, hate, resentment. The intense emotions quickly settled down, but it was shocking for her. The Yeon-woo that she had seen until now was always cold and logical. It was the first time she saw such a reaction. However, Yeon-woo just turned around with emotionless eyes. He had a questioning look, like he was asking her why she called his name. Heidi pulled herself together and shook her head. It's nothing. You were just quiet. Yeon-woo nodded his chin. I'll be looking around above here, so you go down. Also. Yes. I'll let everyone know not to come this way. Don't worry. Heidi realized what Yeon-woo was going to say and spoke with heavy eyes. Yeon-woo nodded and moved past her to the spire. After watching his back for some time, she quickly turned around and scattered the players elsewhere. Because of that, she didn't hear it. The sound of Yeon-woo clenching his teeth as he entered the spire. That son of a b. He dared to. Yeon-woo was furious. Before he saw the spire, he was already holding himself back. It was annoying that there weren't any traces of his brother, but he decided to look at everything logically to identify any weaknesses. Bae-luk was one of the best toxicologists within the tower, and he had a poisonous air around him that could get someone sick just by walking next to him. One breath of his could kill an entire tree. To go against such a guy, Yeon-woo needed to prepare thoroughly. He had the fire property, which was probably the direct opposite of poison, but among the poisons he used, there were strange ones that weren't affected by any property. Yeon-woo was going to look in every nook and cranny of the island while he was recovering. If different poisons had been created and experimented with here, he could learn many things. Just by observing how the island was organized, he thought he would be able to find countless secrets related to the guy. However, where had all the people gone? He needed to look into why they had left the island as it was. Finding his calm, Yeon-woo was able to sort through all the information he found. But he was hit with something unexpected. The moment that he arrived at the spire, where Bae-luk usually stayed when he was on the island, he saw Arthea's symbol at the very top of the tower. How would he not be angry? Bae-luk had created the extreme poison that ate away at his brother's body until the end. It was also Bae-luk who pierced his heart and killed players who wanted to help him. Leant and Bahul had rebelled with other forces, but Bae-luk and Vieradoon had the biggest hand in bringing his brother down. Someone who didn't deserve to speak about Arthea had its symbol on the tower? Crunch! He wanted to destroy everything on this island, especially that spire. Still, he managed to hold himself back. He didn't know why Bae-luk had put Arthea's symbol on the spire. It might have been to mock his brother, or he could have done it out of boredom. Being moved by such a thing wasn't something he should do. First, he had to answer the questions in one side of his mind. There are outsiders here, but there's no reaction. Although he had cut off the channel communicating with the outside and the magical barriers, there should have been some kind of reaction from the island with all these outsiders on it. However, Bae-luk wasn't doing anything. Yeon-woo wondered whether he had thrown the island away, but in that case, he would have destroyed the island completely. There were still different documents and experiment subjects left on the island. Something definitely happened to the island. It seemed that it had affected Bae-luk as well. Something to make him quickly leave his manufacturing plant. What could it be? As Yeon-woo asked himself this, he walked through the countless hallways of the spire. There were different rooms to his sides, but none of them seemed particularly important. Just then, a flight of stairs appeared before him. There were 2 flights of stairs going up and down. Of the 2 directions, Yeon-woo chose the one that went underground. I was surprised to see so many things have changed after seeing the island for the first time in a while. So this is why he left from time to time. He was making this? It wasn't that his brother had never come to the island after giving the coordinates to Bae-luk. Occasionally, Bae-luk would leave Arthea, and his brother had followed Bae-luk here once out of curiosity. At the time, this was the building Bae-luk had stayed in. The 2nd floor was used for visitors, and the 3rd floor was used for storage rooms and archives. Also, he said that personal experiments happened in a large-scale underground room with a special defense system. Underground, it was so large and ridiculously complicated. It was pretty much a maze, ugh. There was a thick iron door at the end of the descending stairs. It was a door that would never open unless a special password using magic was entered. Yeon-woo brought his magic bayonet down powerfully. Clang! However, the iron door was so sturdy and thick that it wasn't even scratched. Tisk! Yeon-woo clicked his tongue and got into position again to swing his magic bayonet with consciousness. Black aura covered it, and a deep scratch was left on the iron door. Quang! With the sound of an explosion, the iron door was blown away. What was revealed was a complicated hallway that was twisted like a maze, like the diary had said. It looked to be even more complicated than when his brother had come. It was difficult to move through it with what the diary said. Of course, that didn't mean there wasn't a way. Scatter! Check-esh! Yeon-woo's shadow stretched out, and about 30 monster portents scattered around him. Yeon-woo was planning on moving everything here into Intrinian first. Boo and Brahm would probably analyze it for him. He felt a bit bad because he was increasing their workload, but it was the best solution. However, there was something Yeon-woo had to take from here. Here. Twisting through the hallways, he stood in front of a door. It was an experimental lab with all kinds of flasks and containers. Yeon-woo left his subordinates to collect those objects, and he instead headed towards a wall that was further inside. When he tapped the wall, there was a clear sound. It meant that it was empty inside. He turned the book next to him. As he did, the wall flipped, and a large safe was revealed. Bingo! Yeon-woo brought his magic bayonet down onto the handle. The safe had a feature that would cause it to explode if something from the outside suddenly shocked it, but the magic bayonet perfectly countered that. Creak! There were 10 tightened flasks of different colors inside. I was so curious why Beyluk's experiments required an entire island. An alchemist would need an island for his experiments, and because he was a toxicologist, he needed to find a way to make poison away from the public. Still, the fact that he needed this much space made it seem like he had an end goal. Like how I needed the elixir desperately. It seemed like Beyluk had the same kind of goal. When I asked him, Beyluk was deep in contemplation for a while before he eventually spoke. Godly human. That was all Beyluk had said, and he didn't explain further. All his brother knew was that Beyluk was trying to recreate a legend that was in the world he used to live in. This island was a lab for him to make the godly human or whatever it was called. The poisons that he used were things that came with the process. These liquids inside the safe were the results of all the experiments. Basically, it was an upgraded version of the strengthening potion Yeon-woo made when he was a part of the Foreign Legion for the Red Dragon. But one thing's for sure. Yeon-woo's eyes flashed. There's nothing better to strengthen holy power or God's blessing than this, since it was made to recreate a legend. Boo. Yes. Moss. Tur. Above his shadow, the Lich, Boo, appeared and bowed. Take these and analyze their beneficial effects and possibly harmful effects. Put the ones that aren't needed somewhere else. Yes. Sir. Boo took the 10 flasks and returned to the shadow. There's no way such a suspecting guy would have left the results open like this. Yeon-woo predicted that half of the 10 flasks would be pure poison. It might have looked like an elixir on the outside, but it might have been a poison that could melt your body instantly. Beyluk was definitely capable of doing that. Just then, the monster portents let him know that they had gathered all the materials inside the spire. Collect everything else on the island too. They returned into his shadow again. With this, he had gotten what he needed from the island. Yeon-woo slowly stepped out of the room. Yeon-woo left the underground and slowly searched the second and third floors. There was nothing there because the monster portents had taken everything, but it was useful to observe how Beyluk had lived. When he arrived at the farthest room on the third floor, the study, he unwittingly smirked. Half of the wall that he saw as soon as he entered the door was glass. He could see the river of souls sparkling in the sunlight, and it looked picturesque. Yeon-woo though he just spent all his time in dark labs, but so he still had a normal side to him too. Hey. Updat DFRM Novel B, I, N.C, O, M. There was nothing about Bayluk that he liked. He felt the strong urge to find him that instant and break his neck. It was pretty much a relief that he didn't appear here. If he was in front of him, Yeon-woo would have turned everything to ruin, not caring about the research that was done. Crunch! Yeon-woo ground his teeth again and looked at the black bracelet and chains that suddenly began to ring. Erng, erng. It was like it was trying to say something. The shackles on his left ankle also shook. It was something he had felt since after gaining the grief of the Black King, but Yeon-woo felt like his connection with the bracelet had become deeper. He could handle the monster portents even more smoothly, and the third spirit felt different too. It was like he could feel something sticky and bleak at his fingertips. It was something he couldn't explain. Was it because his understanding of the despair of the Black King was deeper after finding the set? Azrael looks at you with silent eyes. And after he gained the shackles, Azrael's gaze had become more intense. He was a god of death who definitely knew something about the Black King. Just what was the identity of the Black King? On the other hand, it's too quiet on this side. The godly society, Olympus remains silent. From Zeus's astrap to Poseidon's Triana. Although two of the holy artifacts of the Olympians of Olympus had been swallowed, they were strangely quiet. Yeon-woo rubbed the shackles with deep eyes. Azrael is watching you. Azrael quietly urges you to check the artifact. At Azrael's continued urging, Yeon-woo pushed aside his thoughts and opened the information window of the shackles. Chapter 286 Island, 3. Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 3/12. Grief of the Black King. Category, Sabaton. Rank. Summary. This artifact is unique. There is only one that exists in the entire tower, and it is completely bound to its owner. It cannot be shared or traded with anyone else. Currently, you cannot see anything about it. Only after you have certain qualifications can you see it. When he first opened the information, he wasn't in his right mind because of the fight with Bentik, so he hadn't looked too closely. But after confirming it, he laughed futilely. Qualifications. An important clue to discovering the Black King's identity had turned out to be a false lead, so he was annoyed. There wasn't anything about the conditions to become qualified, so it was even more annoying. However, that doesn't mean there's no clue at all. Yeon-woo opened the information window of the black bracelet. Despair of the Black King. Category, Vambrace. Rank. Summary, the past. Were always fearful of the great and mighty Black King. In the end, they betrayed him and locked him away in the darkness. The Black King trembled with rage during that immeasurable eternity. Thanks to that, the three objects that bound him became his servants. The grudge inside the objects will try to test the user because it is dark. Be careful not to be swallowed by it. Yeon-woo focused on the summary, ignoring the options and warnings. When he first attained the despair of the Black King, he didn't know what any of it was about, but with the grief that swallowed Poseidon's Triana, he could somewhat guess. Are the question marks in the first sentence gods of Olympus? The Black King set had swallowed Zeus and Poseidon's holy artifacts. This meant that the Black King had enmity with Olympus. Yeon-woo especially focused on the word betrayal. Betrayal was usually an emotion felt when someone close to you had turned their backs. He could guess that the Black King had been close to Olympus before becoming enemies. The Black King might be a holy being from Olympus. In the legends, until Zeus took charge, Olympus was filled with war. From the Great War between Titanomachia and Gigantomachia to the end of Ouranos, and the stories of heroes in the War of Troy. There were countless gods who had been removed from Olympus. And it wasn't like the legends that Yeon-woo knew were all true. There might have been different sides to the story not known to the lower world and fallen gods not known to the outside. However, with this, he had narrowed down the meaning by quite a lot. If he looked for a few more clues from here, there were only a few gods who could be the Black King. Those related to death who were in Olympus or close to them. The moment he thought of the traits of the despair of the Black King, the gazes following him became more intense. Azrael quietly looks at you. A god of Olympus, Thanatos, observes you. A god of the Chan sect, king of 7 hells, crosses his arms and observes you. A god of Ea, Nergal, burst out laughing crazily. He smirks at you, wondering if you'll be able to find out as a mortal. A god of Deva, Kasidagarba looks at you with sad eyes. Dispater smiles violently. Izanami swallows. A demon of Niflheim, Hell, expresses his greed for you. A demon of El Infernal, Halfas, screams, flapping his wings. He shows his lunacy. Isma Deval looks at you strangely. All the gods of death are watching you. All the demons of death are awaiting your judgment. Agar shouts, saying not to touch what's his. The gods and demons ignore him. Gods and demons related to death or the beyond. After he acquired the grief of the Black King, the gazes on him became stickier, and now, they were outright direct. It was clear that they were after the items of the Black King. I've never heard of an artifact that deals with death and souls until this bracelet. Actually, this was the question that Yeon-woo had all this time. It wasn't like there weren't any necromancers or witch doctors in the tower. Even Bu was a witch doctor who dealt with corpses and souls. However, there were limits to how players dealt with souls. He had never heard of anyone being able to freely control 1,000 souls. There wasn't any mention of players like this in the diary either. Nor was there anything about strengthening souls to make them servants. Even the player closest to death, the vampiric Lord Bathory, wasn't this powerful. However, the despair of the Black King made this possible, and Yeon-woo's combative power increased. If he worked with his spirit familiars, he could defeat the 9 dragon sons. Although Bathory had the trait of a lord to rule over many, she couldn't be compared to Yeon-woo. It was just that Yeon-woo hadn't unlocked all his potential yet. There was still a lot of power within the despair of the Black King. There were 2 options that weren't unlocked yet, and his collection was growing larger. It was an authority that went beyond an authority. There was no reason why Azrael and the other gods and demons wouldn't watch him with fiery gazes. A message from Azrael has arrived. Message: don't suspect anything. You are the only human to have been chosen by him. You have the qualification to become a godly human. A message from Azrael has arrived. Message: so accept it. Trust and follow. You'll be rewarded for it in the future. A message from Azrael has arrived. Message: furthermore, accept me. Become my apostle, my shadow, my servant, and my spiritual body. I will lead you down the right path. I am a faithful servant of his. A message from Azrael has arrived. Message: the authority that I shared was also from him, and a message from Agar's has arrived. Message: no. You can't leave me for that. Yeon-woo moved Agar's message to the side and read Azrael's message. His eyes sunk. Azrael is calling himself a servant. Yeon-woo raised his head high towards Azrael, who he couldn't see but knew was watching him from above. From what he knew, Azrael's holiness was pretty high. No, because he was a being who oversaw life and death, there was no way it would be low. Like what Poseidon, Azrael, of course, had a lot of pride. The fact that he had lowered himself like this meant that the Black King was an incredible being when he was alive. Furthermore, Thanatos is silent. Nergal is silent. Kasidagarba is silent. The gods and demons of death were silent, as if they were adding on to what Azrael was saying. From what Yeon-woo had figured out so far, the gods and demons were extremely bored on the 98th floor, and they quickly became interested if something out of the ordinary happened. The reason why they were quiet now was probably because the gods and demons of death knew or suspected who the Black King was. But then there's another problem. Azrael is a god of Malak. He has no relation to Olympus. Then was I wrong to think that it was related to Olympus? His questions didn't end here. And it's strange that Hades hasn't reacted to anything. The pillars of modern Olympus were Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. They ruled over the sky, seas, and land, and Hades was also a ruler of the underground. He was a god who should have reacted to this situation the most, but there weren't any messages from him. Then is the Black King Hades. If Hades was betrayed by Zeus and Poseidon and is locked somewhere. This also made sense, but it was hard to say that Hades had a higher level than the other gods and demons of death. Then is it Cronus, who was stabbed in the back by Zeus? Or Ouranos, further back in time? Yeon-woo's eyes darkened. And there's a possibility that it's Lucille. The being who had spread out his wings to soar high into the sky and fallen because multiple gods and demons tore his wings off. It was hard to exclude him from the candidates. I need to unlock the seal on the information window first or look for the last clue. The information window said there were 3 binds of the Black King. Edora had said that the binds might be a vambrace, a sabaton, and a gorget. Then it was obvious where the gorget would come from. Hades's magical helm, Cunning. However, from what Yeon-woo knew, an apostle of Hades didn't exist in the tower yet. It was possible Hades had an apostle, but Yeon-woo didn't have a way to find Cunning like he had found Bentik. Nov, L, by, N, com. Still, there was still a way. If he couldn't get Cunning now, he could look for a way to get it. He was also planning on looking more closely into the vambrace and sabaton while he was at it. The 3 Cyclops brothers who made holy artifacts for Zeus and the others. I have to find them. Brontes, Steropes, Argesh. They were the children of Ouranos and Gaia, but they had been trapped in Tartarus because their appearances were horrifying, and when Zeus saved them, they gave the gods of Olympus Astrap, Triana, and Cunning as presents. He had a few clues related to them. Yeon-woo was going to chase after them as soon as he cleared the 30th floor. Wouldn't he be able to discover something he hadn't until now? Yeon-woo silently rubbed the bracelet on his wrist. The gazes of the gods and demons of death were still sticky and obsessive. It was displeasing to him. Asterisk. Still. Recovery first. Ignoring the focused gazes, he pulled out something from his shadow. It was Bentik's severed right arm. While everyone was busy with the arrival of Duke Ardbat and Waltz, one monster portent had collected it. An apostle was an incarnation of a god and their holy body. Of course they would be filled with a god's blessings. Bentik's arm looked like a delicious prey with many nutrients in it. A message from Poseidon has arrived. Message, stop. You dare. You. Yeon-woo ignored the furious message and wrapped his left hand around Bentik's right arm. Swallow. Clack, clack. A black lump opened wide, revealing sharp canines. Chapter 287 Island, 4. Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 4/12. Tien, God's blessing will be changed to divine blessing, demon's blessing to demonic blessing, and dragon's blessing to draconic blessing. Bentik's eyes shot open. Captain! Are you up, Kook? The servant who eagerly greeted him gasped. Bentik had wrapped his hand around his neck. The servant couldn't say anything. Looking into Bentik's blazing eyes, he was speechless. He felt like he was going to be crushed right then and there. Where's Jinrang? Sorry. Jinrang. Where is he? That's. The servant wanted to say something but was so stricken with fear that he couldn't. It only angered Bentik further. Just when he was about to crush the servant's neck. Stop scolding that innocent child. Jinrang opened the door and entered. There was a bowl of porridge in his hands. However, Bentik didn't see any of that. Jinrang. Calling out Jinrang's name, he ground his teeth. That guy had interfered with his fight. Bentik was a person who called himself a beast and hated people stepping into his fights more than anything. It was because he saw it as an attack on his competence. However, Jinrang was calm even while receiving Bentik's murderous aura. The servant who had barely squirmed out of Bentik's grip fainted. They stayed like that for a while. Bentik closed his eyes with a crumpled face, letting out a long breath. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were still blazing, but the madness in them was gone. Fine. Since it's coming from you, it must be right. Thank you for understanding. Jinrang bowed. Bentik knew what happened when you were destroyed by selfishness. His lover, Lana. He couldn't follow in her steps. He tried to hold back his anger. He trusted Jinrang's loyalty and decisiveness more than anyone else's. However, Bentik bared his teeth at the bowing Jinrang. This won't happen again. Of course. He was acting like it was natural. Bentik snorted. Dry bastard. He wanted to make Jinrang suffer by being pettish, but Jinrang took it in stride. Bentik laughed emptily, feeling like Jinrang was above him. But only for a moment. Bentik looked at his side with hard eyes. The sleeve where his right arm should have been was empty. My arm isn't healing. Yes, it's not. Jinrang also had a hard face. Holy power was known as a power that gods bestowed. However, to be exact, holy power was a power of creation. It could make things that didn't exist and make things from one's imagination into reality. It was also a power that returned things to their original state. The reason why Bentik was able to recover quickly even after his body was destroyed was because he had an ample amount of this holy power. With his channel with Poseidon strengthened, it was right that his cut-off right arm was restored. That was the original Bentik. Holy power should have reconstructed him back to his original appearance. However, his right arm was still not restored. The cells should have been moving weren't even budging. Bentik knew what that meant. Kahul. Seems like he's enjoying my arm. Bentik let out a loud chuckle. He actually liked this situation. From his holy artifact to his arm. The guy took quite a lot of his stuff. The hoarder. He was a greedy guy. It was fun. He was looking forward to it. How would he feel when he twisted that guy's neck? He'll probably come back here. I hope he comes quickly. Bentik's eyes shone with madness. Just then, Bentik's shadow wavered. A long narrow eye slightly blinked and settled back into it again. Asterisk. You have gained a divine blessing. You have gained a divine blessing. You have gained an immense amount of divine blessings. The hiding divine blessing reacts. Yeon-woo could feel the strength flooding into his body. For the first time, the divine blessing that had always been covered by the demonic blessing or the draconic blessing woke up and stretched. Like it had met a friend. Like it had been an excluded student, and the new student was an old friend from their past neighborhood. He could feel how overjoyed it was. Poseidon screams. Poseidon comes down from his throne and yells. He is shouting at you to stop. Poseidon is suggesting his subordinate gods punish you. His subordinate gods are scared. Poseidon suggests a heavy punishment for you to Olympus. The result of the vote has failed to be unanimous as Athena and Hermes opposed it. Poseidon protests vehemently to Athena and Hermes. Agars looks at you with frustrated eyes. Agars urges you to accept the demonic blessing. It wasn't the blessing of a normal god. It was the blessing of a greater god like Poseidon. Yeon-woo felt the power surging through his body. Crack, crack. His body also changed. The formation of his cells slightly changed, and his body type also became different. It wasn't enough to change his trait, the demonic dragon body, but this was a great reward for Yeon-woo. Not only did his understanding of gods become deeper, but he was able to take Poseidon's strength by that much. Everything else aside. Your affinity for the water property has increased by 30. Your control of the water property has increased by 25. Yeon-woo, who only had a deep affinity with fire and darkness properties, was able to gain a significant amount of affinity and control over the water property for the first time. The River of Souls was completely disadvantageous to Yeon-woo, so he had been desperate for the water property. It was solved in one go. Woo! Catching his breath, Yeon-woo slowly moved. Crack, crack. His body felt stiff because of the changes to his body type. The Philosopher's Stone circulated to quickly assimilate with his body. With this, most of the injuries from the fight with Bentik were healed. No, they were beyond healed. His abilities had increased. He focused his power in his eyes. A bright light flashed in his eyes and disappeared. Bentik! I must catch you! Even without the reason for avenging Lana, Yeon-woo strongly felt that he needed to have Bentik in his hands. Just swallowing a single arm was this much, but what would happen if he absorbed his entire body? He might be able to awaken his demonic dragon body by another step. Then what do I have to call it then? Divine demonic dragon body? Demonic divine dragon body? Yeon-woo grinned, thinking thoughts that were out of the ordinary for him when he felt Poseidon's sharp gaze. Poseidon is glaring at you with a raging glower. Yeon-woo lightly punched the air in his direction and slowly stood up. Just then, a blue fire flared next to him, and a bird the size of a human's upper body appeared. Swoosh! Master! Are you okay? Nike looked at him with concern. It seemed that Nike had felt his emotions through their connection after being woken up from his deep sleep because of the changes in his body. I'm okay. Yeon-woo stroked his head, proud of Nike for worrying about him. Nike purred under his hand like a cat, but he continued to look concerned. This time, Nemesis's voice rang out. You were too relaxed this time. Yeon-woo lifted his head to look above him. Nemesis was looking down at him from the air. His words were dripping with frustration. Why didn't you call for us even in that situation? Yeon-woo felt like he knew why Nemesis was so angry. When he had clashed with Bentik and when Waltz's primeval body was chasing him, Yeon-woo hadn't summoned his monster portents or his legendary beasts. You weren't always like that. You only focused on revenge. I'm saying you weren't someone to be drunk on the fight and become dull. However, it was different this time. Nemesis narrowed his eyes. Just what were you thinking? Yeon-woo shut his eyes. All kinds of thoughts moved through his head. Nemesis was correct. He had been drunk on the fight. It was an accurate description of how he felt. The fight with Bentik was too amusing. It was a pleasure that Yeon-woo hadn't felt before. Also, it was a release. He acknowledged the beast inside of him for the first time and let it run free. And because of that, he had lost his sense of reason, which was unlike him. He was blinded from the pleasure. He didn't want monster portents of legendary beasts interfering to interrupt his fun. It was something that shouldn't have happened ever considering his personality and the path he had taken for far. He should have fought alongside Shannon, Han Ryeong, and Rebecca when he was going against Bentik. Also, he should have sunk the rest of the ships of Triton. And even if he was drunk on the battle with Bentik, he should have regained his logic when Waltz appeared. However, he wasn't able to do that. Rather, he was glad to see her. He had the naive thought that she might be able to excite him some more. It's my mistake. Opening his eyes again, he acknowledged his mistake. I'll be more careful in the future. Even if he let out the beast from its cage, he needed to have a tight leash on it. Yeon-woo felt this painstakingly with the recent incidents. He always had to be reasonable. KRRRNG. Don't bother Yeon-woo so much. Yeon-woo's also reflecting. Nike flapped his wings at Nemesis and shouted. Nemesis let out a grunt. He was weak towards Nike, who was pretty much his little brother. Anyways, next time, don't struggle with these things alone and call for us. Didn't you say you were making a clan? Then we're also a part of that. I'll keep that in mind. Yeon-woo silently nodded. He knew that Nemesis was genuinely worried about him. Nemesis didn't say much either after that and asked with a serious look. Aside from that, what are you going to do now? You're not completely recovered right now. The first daughter of the Summer Queen? You probably need to do something about her first. Nemesis had already fought with the Summer Queen with Jeong-woo, so he knew how powerful Waltz was. She already seemed like a monster. She became even more of one while I wasn't around. Nov. L. By. N. Com. Nemesis was worried about that. It was obvious how much danger Yeon-woo was in after being marked as Waltz's target. He still had many floors to climb. However, Yeon-woo shook his head like he was fine. No. She won't be able to chase after me that easily. Nemesis narrowed his eyes. Are you? I'm not drunk on the excitement anymore. Towards the end, I somewhat got a grip. What are you saying? Look at this. Grinning, he opened his hand. Nike and Nemesis looked at his palm. Swoosh. A black fire spread out, and they could see a scene. This. Nemesis muttered with surprise. In the scene, Waltz's primeval body was fighting Duke Ardbad and two other players. Waltz's primeval body looked to be in critical condition, like she would fall any second. On the other hand, the players along with Duke Ardbad were working together in perfect sync. However, as if to show why she was the new king after the Summer Queen, she wasn't defeated by their combined attack. Rather, the three dukes looked shocked as they continued their attacks. Are these? Yes. They're all dukes of the Bloodland. It looks like they came at Duke Ardbad's request. The other two dukes were familiar to Nemesis. They were all people he needed to chew up and swallow like Duke Ardbad. It was hilarious seeing his enemies fight each other. One of them even thought that Yeon-woo was on their side. Nemesis knew that it was a monster portent hidden inside Duke Ardbad's shadow showing them this. No, it wasn't merely a monster portent. Hanryong. It's Hanryong. Just when did you plant him? Nemesis exclaimed. Even though he was connected to Yeon-woo, he couldn't read all of Yeon-woo's thoughts and actions. Planting Hanryong inside Duke Ardbad's shadow had happened so sneakily that even Nemesis hadn't caught it. Yeon-woo's own allies didn't know, so there was no way Duke Ardbad would. He realized why Yeon-woo was confidently saying he got a grip towards the end. To think that Yeon-woo would have accomplished this on impulse. Nemesis clicked his tongue inwardly. His master's personality was really different from his former master's. He was starting to feel bad for scolding him like that. Whoa! Nike was looking at it like it was incredible. Nemesis asked frantically. But does it make a difference, putting Hanryong there? The Waltz over there is only a shadow anyway. She can always send another body over after being defeated by the three dukes. No. It will be hard to do that again. The White Dragon isn't exactly in the situation to do that. Her appearance this time was probably because she wanted to get a look at me rather than catching me. Yeon-woo knew the situation the White Dragon was in. The 76th floor was in a chaotic state. Although Waltz was acknowledged as the ruler after the Summer Queen, the floor was still in pandemonium because of the three-way battle between the White Dragon, the Green Dragon, and the Black Dragon. But the only reason why she had sent a primeval body was because she wanted to confirm the enemy of the Summer Queen. Waltz wasn't a stupid person who couldn't get her priorities straight. If she was stupid, she wouldn't have been able to gather the forces that she has now. The reason why she was fighting against the Bloodland was probably to decrease their numbers. Makes sense. Then are you planning on leaving them alone? No. Since this is just an assumption as well. If Waltz decides on chasing us, then we'll be put in a tough spot too. We don't have the time to become trapped in a battlefield either. Then what are you going to do? I have a nice spark, so there's no need to leave it alone. Nemesis wondered what Yeon-woo was going to do this time. Yeon-woo was scariest when he was scheming things like this. They say this on Earth. Yeon-woo smiled coldly with his teeth bared. Fights and fires are most fun to watch the bigger they are. As soon as he finished speaking, Duke Ardbad's shadow wavered, and something popped out to attack Duke Ardbad's head. Duke Ardbad's head cleanly rolled on the ground. It was something that happened during the fight with Waltz, so the other dukes seemed completely shocked. Duke Ardbad had a focused face, like he had been concentrating on the fight until the end. The other two dukes shouted. Han Ryeong picked up Duke Ardbad's soul, and he hid in the shadows again to hide his presence. Waltz didn't lose this chance and exploded her martial attack again. One of the dukes who had been shouting was blown again. Their formation was messed up in an instant. The scene there. The vision that Han Ryeong shared had disappeared as he left the fight. Nemesis and Nike didn't say anything for a while, their mouths agape. Feeling a soul return to his collection, Yeon-woo smiled coldly. Since a duke died, the bloodland will probably be out for the White Dragon's blood. At Yeon-woo's relaxed tone, Nemesis sighed. What Shannon says all the time is correct. What? Your personality is. Still. He had saved Yeon-woo's life once. Nemesis didn't know that Yeon-woo would slice his head off like that. Shut up. Yuri twins born at the same time and place, but I don't know how you're so different. Goodness. Nemesis sighed deeply. And deep inside the collection, Shannon was nodding furiously in agreement. Chapter 288 Island, 5. Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 5/12. Yeon-woo left the Iron Tower a day later. It was to get used to the divine blessings and to go through his fight with Bentik. Yeon-woo was awake the entire night going over the fight using time difference. He was looking for a way to defeat Bentik. In the last fight, anyone would say it was definitely my loss. Actually, most people would have said that it was a tie. Nemesis and Nike considered it a tie as well, but as someone who actually fought in the battle, Yeon-woo knew that it was his loss. It was only a tie because he had improvised and used an irregularity. Yeon-woo fell completely short in terms of skills. Yeon-woo didn't like that. At least as much as Bentik. Yeon-woo had promised Nemesis that he wouldn't be drunk on excitement and do something stupid. He was thinking the same thing now. He wasn't going to waste the weapons he had. However, he was still regretful about one thing. The battle with Bentik. He wanted to end the unfinished fight with his own hands. He still remembered the glee of a beast clashing with another, two monsters colliding. Thinking of back then, he felt his fingers tingle. He wanted to see the end of it. Of course, this time, he was planning on fighting and using all his cards if he was losing. The divine blessing that Bentik had was tempting. Also, in that process, he wanted to see the limits of his power without anyone's help. Although, Nemesis will shout at me again if he finds out. Yeon-woo adjusted the connection so Nemesis wouldn't be able to read his thoughts and began to review again. In that process, he could see Bentik's strengths and weaknesses. Strong but uncompromising. Bentik's advantages could be described in one word. Strength. Bentik was too strong. There was nothing hiding, blocking, or changing the power he emitted. He just broke and destroyed things with brute force. Yeon-woo felt like he understood why Bentik was called the ruler king all this time. He didn't budge or surrender. Updated from Nouvelle Bien, com. However, if you were too firm, it meant that you would break apart irrevocably once you fell. There was no way a master like Bentik didn't know that, so he was probably trying to become strong enough to the point that he couldn't be broken at all. Then, I only need to find a way to break him. Yeon-woo repeated many simulations over and over again to find the answer. His broadened consciousness after absorbing the Summer Queen allowed him to calculate more, so he was able to experience many things. He gained a lot in that process. He also discovered variables. Poseidon's followers, apostles from the quest. I'll have to be careful of them too. There had been distance between them, so he couldn't tell, but there was someone who had blocked Duke Ardbad while protecting Bentik. Behind him, there were players who were as powerful as him. They were all players with holy power. It was clear they were apostles of Orion, Antaeus, and Charybdis, Poseidon's children. They were probably the other Poseidon's apostles mentioned in the hidden quest. Since they were related to Poseidon by blood, they were definitely strong as well. Orion was a hunter so powerful he was called a giant, and Antaeus was as much of a brute as Heracles. Charybdis was a monster who swallowed an ocean. Antaeus and Charybdis weren't as well known, but they were children of Poseidon and Gaia. Since they were both gods created by a higher god and a founding god of Olympus, they might have even been more powerful than Poseidon. It's filled with monsters related to the sea. He realized how Triton was able to control such a large amount of forces in that short amount of time. If they had 4 apostles, there was no way they would be a minor clan. Also, it was clear that Triton still had many things they were hiding. He had to stand against them alone. It wouldn't be easy. Hoarder. You, how can you? It took him quite a while to realize he was dead. It had been so sudden, and he hadn't imagined that Yeon-woo would hurt him somehow. No, it was impossible that someone would hurt someone who saved their life. He was a knight who protected the emperor and an honorable sword wielder. He couldn't believe Yeon-woo's actions because of his beliefs as a knight. Also, he had been admiring Yeon-woo's courage and will to fight Bentik. When Yeon-woo smirked and took off his mask. Duke Ardbad trembled from the betrayal. Like how all people who had seen Yeon-woo's face reacted, he seemed shocked as well. He even screamed, saying that it wasn't possible. You. At the same time, Duke Ardbad realized that they had all been played by Yeon-woo. From when Viscount Lao was swept away in the demon's forest to here. How the Walpurgis Nacht had fallen, and the Summer Queen had died. And the enmity between the White Dragon and the bloodland that would spring from his death. All these had been the product of one person. And it was someone they thought they had killed. Duke Ardbad couldn't speak. Swallow him. However, as if he didn't care about Duke Ardbad's reaction, Yeon-woo looked at Han Ryong, who had been quietly waiting for Yeon-woo's orders, and nodded. You dare? Who do you think I am? Let go. Take your dirty hand off of me, I said. Duke Ardbad squirmed to get away from the shadows rising from the ground. However, they became tentacles tightening around his hands and feet, and they completely took him apart and began to swallow him. Crunch, crunch. The monsters swallowed all of Duke Ardbad as if they were devouring a tasty meal. All the energy that came from it was absorbed by Han Ryong. Check-esh. A dark fog blew towards Han Ryong. It wrapped around him, and he began to change. Han Ryong's Death Knight level is rising, and he is no longer confined by his former limits. The evolution is beginning. Warning! Until the evolution is finished, please make sure there is nothing bothering you. If the evolution fails, all the levels earned may disappear at once. Han Ryong's level when he was alive was high, and he had the potential to become stronger anytime as long as his body could match it. He was able to surpass his limits by absorbing Duke Ardbad's soul, and he began to evolve into a death noble. It would be nice if there were more people like this. Yeon-woo muttered looking at Han Ryong, who was struggling to evolve. For him, it was better to have one more stronger person. Shannon snorted, his arms crossed. It was a while since he left the shadows. How greedy! But this won't work anymore. Unless they're fools. Yeon-woo silently nodded his head. He knew it too. The only reason why he had caught Duke Ardbad was because of the timing, not his skills. The Duke was weak after fighting for a while, and he had been focused on the fight with Waltz, so he didn't expect any attacks from the outside. It was also thanks to Han Ryong, who knew to attack at that time. The Saber God was still the Saber God, no matter how low his level was, he definitely wasn't weaker than Duke Ardbad. But now, these tricks wouldn't work anymore. Now that they knew that attacks through shadows were possible, they would prepare for it as well. It was a shame for Yeon-woo, but overall, it wasn't something he would lose anything from, so he wasn't concerned about it too much and quickly got over it. I can just think of another way. Around the time when he was done organizing his thoughts, Walk. Han Ryeong finally appeared. Light shined through the cracks and settled down again. There was a death noble wearing darkness where the light left. Inferno sight was blazing under his helm. Step, step. Han Ryeong kneeled and bowed his head towards Yeon-woo. Respects towards my master. It was a loyalty pledge for his owner who had allowed him to walk a new path. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Yeon-woo was done with everything and came back outside onto the island, Heidi ran towards him frantically. The players who were enjoying their breaks all stood up, tense. Later tonight, we'll set sail. However, everyone just looked at each other in silence, and no one answered. Concern filled their faces. Just then, Heidi stepped up carefully. She was most definitely the leader who represented them and spoke for them. Isn't it too early? If we leave now. If you're worried about seeing Triton and the Spring Queen again, you can stay here. The choice is yours anyway. Yeon-woo turned around. They had no reason to be loyal to him. He was planning on leaving them on the island if they wanted to. Although he didn't know if they would survive there. The players all sighed. If they stayed, the trial would expire because of the time limit. They didn't want to let that happen. There was nothing they could do but follow him. They hoped this time, the path the hoarder was walking would be tranquil and smooth. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. At the frantic movements of the old cannibal monster humans, the sails spread apart. A breeze started to blow, and the ghost ship left the island. Around the time when they left the fog. Kwang. Kwa kwang. Kwa kwa kwe. A large explosion and ball of fire came from within the island. The fire that swallowed everything destroyed what was in its path. A huge earthquake followed, like a volcano had exploded. All the players on deck looked towards the bow of the ship. However, Yeon-woo, the receiver of the gazes, didn't pay any attention to the island. He was just looking at the sea path, focusing on Sito's holy artifact. The players sweated upon seeing him again. They were grateful towards Heidi. Actually, a few of them had considered whether they should stay on the island. It was an island that had all necessary facilities, and they believed they could survive. However, Heidi had stopped them and convinced people all night to go with her. If they had refused, they would have been swept away by the fire along with the rest of the island. The backs of their necks felt cold. Thankfully, they weren't bothered while crossing the River of Souls this time. They didn't see Triton, the Fantasy Regiment, or Waltz. They didn't even see a single pirate. It was strange that they could cross the river so comfortably. So they were still on their guards, wary of any surprise attacks, and after a few days had passed. All trials have been completed. This is the 29th floor, the Land of Souls. The ghost ship finally arrived on the land of the 29th floor. We're here. The 29th floor. It's the 29th floor. They jumped up and down, happy that their seafaring life was over. Yeon-woo waited until the ship entered the port, and he lightly jumped down when the shore of the river was nearer. Heidi dashed over to the edge and looked down. Are you leaving? Yeon-woo looked up. Heidi was looking at him with a concerned face. He silently nodded. Their contract was only valid until they passed the 28th floor anyway. They would figure out the rest. Heidi knew that, so she couldn't stop him. No, she didn't even have a reason to. She had saved him. She did everything she could so she could have a light conscience. Rather, she was in the position where she could request something from him. Right now, it was wiser to put some distance between them since he was surrounded by all sorts of dangers. Even while knowing that, Heidi felt like she should stop Yeon-woo. It might have been the sixth sense of a woman or the instinct of a fairy. If not that, it might have just been because she wanted to. Later. And when Yeon-woo spoke up, Heidi listened carefully to catch every single word he said. If you want, come find me. If I want. Yeon-woo's words were like a puzzle to Heidi. However, Yeon-woo just turned around and began to walk slowly into the horizon. Heidi looked at his back for a long time. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. If she didn't have so much luggage, I'd have scouted her, but I'll give it some time. Yeon-woo grinned, stepped on the stage of the 29th floor. Heidi was like a diamond in the rough he found while climbing the floors again. A diamond that was starting to shine. He wanted to take her for himself at once, but because there were too many people who depended on her, it would be hard to do that. Still, it wasn't enough to give up on her completely, so he made a promise for the future. He was planning to go look for her again when she became a jewel or have her find him instead. And just like that, Yeon-woo pushed the ghost ship behind him and focused on his steps. With his wide-open draconic eyes, he could see Triton's location. A monster portent inside Bentik's shadow was showing him the way. Trudge, trudge. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. All trials have been completed. Would you like to register your name in the Hall of Fame? You have rejected registration. However, your accomplishments will be left in the history of the tower, and you can change your registration status anytime. This is the 30th floor, the Gate of Sight of Souls. Chapter 289 Poseidon, 1. What about Captain? Seeing the people in front of the door, Jinrang paused. It was Ted and Elaine. They were commanders who led Triton and protected Bentik along with Jinrang. They were Entaz and Charybdis's apostles, and they were twins, like how the gods were actually siblings. He's still resting. I think he's having a hard time because his severed arm isn't regenerating. Are you taking care of him properly? Ted, who was leaning against the wall, narrowed his eyes. He was speaking in a curt tone. Jinrang's face hardened. What do you mean by that? What else would I be talking about? I'm saying something like this wouldn't have happened if you served Captain by his side well. Ted snickered, and Elaine quietly nodded in agreement. They're doing it again. Jinrang had felt that the two were irking him for some time now. He knew that they were pretending to listen to him obediently while actually being envious of his position as Bentik's right hand. It looked pathetic to him. The same went for now. News of Bentik's injuries was spreading quickly around Triton. Everyone knew that he needed some time to recover because he had used up all his holy power. Ted was saying that it was his fault and trying to blame him for something that didn't make sense. Jinrang didn't want to speak with them any further and blatantly hardened his face. Think whatever you want. Other than that, the hoarder is coming here at a quick pace. His recovery was faster than we thought. We have to stop him. Ted snorted, uncrossing his arms. What are you so worried about? We can just catch him. No, shouldn't we be grateful that he's coming here on his own 2 feet? There's no need for us to do anything. Ted thought Yeon-woo was overestimating himself. There were only 49 days to clear everything up to the 30th floor, and Yeon-woo didn't have that much time right now. Just now, he had heard that Yeon-woo had cleared the 29th floor and entered the 30th, but the difficulty of the 30th floor was incomparable to the ones before it. It was better to describe it as trickier. These were trials that were hard to finish even using all your strength for 49 days. He thought Yeon-woo was barely forcing his tired body forward and considered him foolish. His nonchalant attitude was only an act. He was actually very wary of the hoarder. Living beings were more threatening when they were hurt. Yeon-woo was acting exactly like that. This was why Ted was going to catch Yeon-woo. Since he had entered the 30th floor, there were countless routes to attack him. It was perfect. It didn't matter that Yeon-woo was somewhat recovered. He could just break him down further. Ted considered himself to be as powerful as Bentik even though he was his subordinate because of the gods they served. Jinrang clicked his tongue. His eyes narrowed at Ted's arrogance, but he knew that Ted wouldn't listen to his warning anyway, so he didn't say anything. In fact, he wanted to see how much Yeon-woo recovered and what he had done with Bentik's right arm. I can confirm it with Ted and then prepare based on that. He was going to use Ted as bait. Jinrang told Ted to do whatever he wanted and walked away. Ted and Elaine looked at him walk away with frowning faces. He's lofty until the end. So annoying. Why? Isn't that part of his charm? Sister. Ted looked at Elaine with an annoyed face, but Elaine covered her ears with her hands and grinned. I'm not deaf, so don't scream. Also, what Jinrang said isn't wrong. And you have your own thoughts too. We can just find out which one of you is right. He clenched his fists, knowing that Elaine was trying to sound him out, but he just smiled. Fine. I'll bring the hoarder's head first, and we can talk after that. He melted away into the sudden breeze. Elaine quietly murmured to herself, thinking that Jinrang and Ted had led Triton well so far, considering their opposite personalities. The hoarder, It'll get pretty noisy soon. If Yeon-woo was really climbing the floors with Triton as his target. Elaine couldn't hold in her excitement. ******. Trial, congratulations on your strong will and courage for surviving bravely in the world of souls. Now, you are getting ready to enter the world you came from. However, it doesn't look easy. Your body has become familiar with the world of souls as you have breathed, eaten, and drank from here for some time. From now on, cleanse your body of the poison of the souls completely. Only then will you be given the chance to leave. Time left, 13 days 22 hours 1 minute and 29 seconds. Every 10th floor was like a stage that tested what you earned from the floors below it. So according to the individual, it could feel difficult or easy. The 30th floor stage looked easy, but it was tricky. Cleansing the poison of souls. You had to find the antidote and drink it in the remaining time. The problem is that you have to know accurately what the symptoms of what you were poisoned from. Obviously, there weren't just 1 or 2 antidotes. There were tens of them. And these were just what people knew. The hardest part for most players was to determine what kind of poison had entered their body. Only then could they create an antidote that fit the situation. Even if I find a way to create it, it might not be easy to gather ingredients for it. The 30th floor was too vast. It wasn't hard finding the antidote for each of my team members. It was all thanks to Bayluk. However, the problem was that the ingredients were all spread out over the large stage, and it was hard to find them. The site of souls was extensive. It wasn't like the stages before it were small, but they couldn't match the site of souls. As wide as it was, the environment of each area was slightly different, so the quality and effects of the ingredients were different as well. Of course the players would be extremely frustrated, especially since they didn't have that much time to begin with. And when you met the occasional monster, their annoyance gauge would burst. Merchants were living their best life on the 30th floor. They would gather ingredients beforehand and sell them at expensive prices to players. It was a bad way to use karma, but it was useful for people who were in a rush. But there are so many fakes among them too. You had to be careful when choosing products. Many of these backpacking merchants approached Yeon-woo as well. They asked him if he needed anything and offered to check his symptoms for free. However, Yeon-woo chased all of them away and released his monster portents. He had guys that could gather his ingredients for him, so there was no need for him to run around himself. Also, Yeon-woo had heard an explanation from Boo. So 4 of these are elixirs and the other 6 are poison. Yes. But you have to take the 4 in the order of red, blue, yellow, and black. If you don't My holy power will explode. Your holy power will destroy your body. Bu nodded everything. His chin joints moved and made a clacking sound. Yeon-woo looked down at the medicine that Bu had finished analyzing. It was the elixir for becoming closer to a godly human by amplifying your holy power. As he expected, there was poison mixed among it. He would only be able to avoid getting sick by absorbing the elixirs one by one. Then what about these? Then, these are. Bu began to explain the poison he had analyzed. Yeon-woo's eyes shined. They're Baluk's 8 poisons. Or another version of them. Baluk could be called a leader in the field of poison. One drop of the 8 poisons he made could melt a sea king monster. Yeon-woo knew that each of the 8 poisons was as poisonous as the devil poison. They were right in front of it. He was quite interested. Just then, an idea popped up in his head. If I use it well, I might be able to grow with this, thanks to Baluk. Are you finished analyzing them? I have finished analyzing the poisons. And after this, I am planning on throwing them away. I see. Yeon-woo grinned. Bu didn't know why he was smiling and tilted his head. Yeon-woo always did something unimaginable whenever he laughed like that. But he didn't ask why Yeon-woo was acting like that. Nov, L, by, N, com. There they come. Just then, the monster portents that were scattered across the stage returned. Bu scanned the ingredients in their mouths and was surprised. Master! These are right poison. Are you planning on poisoning yourself further? Yeon-woo silently nodded. Unlike how we were desperate to find the antidote, Baluk said that he would attempt to cure himself through another way. We just watched him, not knowing what he was talking about then. Then, we realized. That guy was a total psycho. Why were none of the people around me normal? At the time, Baluk considered it a waste to get rid of the poison in his body. The quality of the poison of souls was so special that it couldn't be found on any other floor. Baluk thought it would be better to engrave the poison in his body if he was going to get rid of it anyway. If his body changed to get used to the soul poison, he could use it any time he needed. Poison blood. After that, the signature skill that made anti-venom infamous was born. Yeon-woo was planning on receiving poison blood like Baluk had on the 30th floor. Even if he couldn't get the skill, it was also nice if his body could completely get used to poison. And not only could he amplify the soul poison, he had the extreme poisons that Baluk had left behind. Also, Yeon-woo could handle devil poison. If he could reign over all of them, he might be able to catch up more quickly to Baluk, who completed poison blood after he became a ranker. It's dangerous. For the first time, Bu expressed disapproval. He was always faithful and loyal to Yeon-woo, but he knew how dangerous it was this time. Yeon-woo just waved his hand, saying it was fine. The process of how Baluk overworked his body was in the diary. Also, he had the demonic dragon body and trusted the potential he earned after absorbing the Summer Queen. And if something goes wrong, I have cold-blooded and regeneration. The cold-blooded trait increased his resistance to whatever he faced. Moreover, he believed that he could endure it if something went wrong. With his regeneration skill, his body would heal over and over again. After I have poison blood, I'll take the elixirs too. He planned on getting stronger before he clashed with Bentik again. Bu's inferno sight wavered with concern. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. S. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. His mouth still felt numb. He could get used to his body weakening and then becoming tighter again. However, he could still smell the horrid smell and the sickening taste in his mouth. It wasn't something he would ever do again. But the result wasn't bad. Yeon-woo looked at the black smoke whirling around him. It was acidic and poisonous. It was poison blood, which was born by pushing his resistance to poison to the limit. I hope it's effective. Yeon-woo gathered the smoke in his hands and looked down. Under the precipice, he could see countless ships docked at the port. Above them, the trident flag that symbolized Triton was waving. It was the official start of war. Tien, just a heads up, the 5 chapters that are left in the cycle will all be released on the last day. I will be translating them on a plane, and maybe I'll even sneak in a little bonus chapter or 2, haha. Chapter 290 Poseidon, 2. Actually, what Yeon-woo acquired was slightly different from the poison blood he knew. Residual poison blood. Numbering 28. Summary: the combination of poison of souls that is only found on the 30th floor and the extreme poisons that anti-venom made, in addition to the Devil King poison and some dragon blessings. It can cause critical damage depending on how it is used, and your blood will be acidic and poisonous. *100 Poison immunity. You gain a strong resistance to many poisons and acids. Even if you are poisoned, immune cells will quickly be created. You will automatically store the information about the poison and acid that was in your body. *Venom factory. An organ that exudes poisonous formulas will be created next to your heart. The poisons will flow through your circulatory system. The quality of the poison will improve as a result of the information from 100 poison immunity. Depending on the concentration in your blood, the quality of the poison will change, and it may be able to harm the user, so you must be careful. Also, the higher the proficiency of the skill, the more superior the poison becomes. Poison fog. A heavy poison fog will be created using a great amount of your blood. The more you enter the center of poison fog, the stronger the concentration of poison becomes, and there are multiple symptoms of being poisoned. Information about currently learned poison, 8 kinds. 1. Devil King poison. Soul poison. Ecstasy heal. The numbering is the same. Even the summary of the skill was similar to Belux. A skill that granted outstanding resistance to poison and used your blood to artificially create poison. Belux used this in many ways. He would rub his blood on his comrades' swords and share the poison, store the blood inside a glass bottle and throw it when he needed to, and many more things. The poison fog that used a great amount of blood and made the environment deadly by killing everyone, regardless of whether they were allies or enemies, was especially destructive. The residual poison blood was exactly the same summary-wise. There was only one difference. It adds the knowledge of new poisons. Belux used 2 different ways to amplify the power of his poison blood. One of them was to raise the skill's proficiency to make it more effective, and the other was to combine it with another skill to combine multiple poisons at once. But the residual poison blood made it so he didn't have to do that. An option that analyzed the formula of the poison through immune cells. So it means that the effects of the skill will be greater the more poisons I touch, right? It might have been because he had forced down all of Belux's extreme poisons using the regeneration skill over and over again. Soul poison and Devil King poison. He had succeeded in creating an antidote for the most poisonous toxins. It might have been because his body responded to the poison and created new immunities, or it might have been because of the special power of the demonic dragon body. Whatever the reason was, Yeon-woo was satisfied. Of course it wasn't a bad thing. In fact, Yeon-woo was going to set up an appointment with Atran and by the table immediately after this trial was over. He was going to ask for all the extreme and pure poisons he could get. I hope it'll be effective. With those thoughts, Yeon-woo gripped Karshina's dagger backwards and cut his wrist. As his veins were cut, a fountain of blood gushed out. The injury was quickly healed with his regeneration skill, and the blood that was poured out all became a heavy dark red fog and spread into the air. At that moment, rise! On Yeon-woo's orders, a shadow stretched out, and 10s of the monster portents that were waiting appeared. The third spirit. Then Yeon-woo's authority was activated. His strengthened authority from Azrael's continued blessings influenced the monster portents vastly. With the buff effects, the poison fog floated down on the monster portents. Ki-aak. Kayak. Kayak yak. The monster portents all shrieked with joy. A reddish light appeared on their skins, which had only been an ashy black before. They had begun to take on the qualities of the poison as they absorbed. Every breath they breathed out was filled with acidic poison. There's no reason that I should be limited to putting my blood on weapons or on the poison fog. Yeon-woo already had strong attacks. His wave of fire could now be used wide range, and when his black aura was added on top of it, there was nothing he couldn't cut through. Wherever black aura touched, an option called Simmering Spark was activated, and until his opponents were completely swept away by fire, they were hit with damage again and again. So he didn't have to stake his victory on the residual poison blood. The fact that it was both effective and easy to use was nice. However, if it could be used as another weapon for his shadows, things were different. Strengthening his monster portents. The monster portents had the potential to do many things because they could freely move through shadows. Also, because they were born strong, they could easily take care of most players. But if they became stronger, it was even better. If he gave them the poison, they would be able to do even more. Furthermore, residual poison blood used Yeon-woo's blood. It was a good nutrient for the monster portents, and they could accept the poison fog without any problems. Kayak. Monster portents began to jump off the cliff. The players who were cleaning up the port looked back instinctively and were taken by surprise. What is? Koog. Kayak. The player who found the monster portents first couldn't even finish his scream. Suddenly, a monster portent raised his nails and scratched the player's face violently. The player's head was cut and popped off. Other monster portents moved quickly and attacked the other players. What are these? Where did they come from? Block them. Block, Kek. The monster portents were quick and moved with dexterity. Before the players could even get their weapons in place, the monster portents dashed through the shadows. They aimed for the weak spots of the human body. Players who couldn't defend themselves felt the pain of their arms and legs being cut off. Those with shields barely blocked the threatening attacks, but pieces of the armor they were wearing were sliced off, and they were injured as well. How dare you! The players quickly twisted around to catch the monster portents, but they were already settled deep in the shadow. While they were about to move with annoyed faces. Koog. The players suddenly lost their balance and fell to the ground vomiting blood. What is this? Messages suddenly began to pop up in front of them. You have been poisoned by residual poison blood. You are entering a confused state. You are entering a poisoned state. You are entering a severe bleeding state. A lot of your health has decreased. A lot of your attacking power has been decreased. A lot of your defensive power has been decreased. Your life is quickly draining. Just win. All the players were thinking this. The injuries they received were minor, but they suddenly felt like their injured body parts were going to fall off, and parts of their flesh began to rot. Blood incessantly poured out, and they became dizzy. It was a poison that was too strong. An extreme poison that put one in a critical condition with just a tiny amount. The players who were quick to think barely caught their breath after cutting off their infected limbs. However, the players who were late by just a little bit died extremely painful deaths. They quickly attempted to drink their healing potions, but it only delayed the effects of the poison for a small moment. Aok. Keek. This is Kraz. At the same time that the players were pushed away from fear, the ships began to crack. If they couldn't be cracked, their sails were ripped, or they filled up with water. Players died, and their souls were absorbed immediately after. Monster portents ate at their food without leaving anything behind and got rid of all the players in the port. It's more effective than I thought. Yeon-woo didn't interfere with what the monster portents were doing and just looked down with his draconic eyes wide open. He observed the monster portents closely. It was a successful experiment. And there must have been the increase of holy power too. Obviously, the monster portents didn't become stronger just because of residual poison blood. It was because the effects of the 4 elixirs to turn one into a godly human were relayed to them as well. With this, he wouldn't have to hide them anymore as a secret weapon. All this time, even though he had the monster portents, he didn't use them unless it was necessary because he didn't want to attract anyone's attention. The reason why he didn't pull them out during the fight with Waltz's primeval body was also because of his resolve not to reveal his full strength. However, it seemed like it would be a very useful weapon now. If he was powerful enough to make Triton like this, it meant that he wouldn't struggle against most groups. But it's time for him to start appearing. While the ships were sinking one by one, Yeon-woo didn't step up. Actually, if he wanted to, he could blow away all the ships with a wave of fire. The reason why he wasn't was not just because he was testing the monster portent's abilities, but it was also because he was waiting for someone to come. Bentik. He was picking a fight to finish the fight that they weren't able to before. Something's coming. Yeon-woo felt something quickly approach him. It was an apostle with powerful holy power. Under the mask, Yeon-woo's face slightly crumpled. It's not Bentik. He knew because he had swallowed a part of Poseidon's holy power. It was similar to Poseidon's, but it wasn't his. It was similar. It seemed like one of the directors of Triton had appeared. Stop immediately. Kwang. Something suddenly dropped from the sky. It was a man who didn't fall short of Bentik's sharp aura. He appeared with a large wave and broken ship pieces. It's Sir Ted. It's Lieutenant Ted. Lieutenant Ted is here. The expressions of the players who were struggling against the monster portents brightened as soon as they saw Ted. They thought their savior had come. However, Ted pushed the cheers of his subordinates behind him and looked around with blazing eyes. A fierce aura came from him. Ted powerfully swung his hands around. As he did, waves shot up and poured down on the monster portents. Updated from Nouvelle Bien, com. The monster portents frantically went back into the shadows when the water came down. Ted followed where the shadows were moving with his eyes. Above the cliff, Yeon-woo was looking down at them. He looked exactly how he did when he fought Bentik. Ted confirmed his suspicion that Yeon-woo was hiding a skill. The hoarder was trying to use the skill that he hadn't shown when he was fighting Bentik here. But foolishly, the hoarder had made a mistake. Ted was sure that the reason why the hoarder wasn't participating in the battle was because his body hadn't recovered yet. Pat. Ted tossed himself up without any hesitation. He thought he would be able to take care of Yeon-woo then. However, clang. Ted wasn't able to attack Yeon-woo. Yeon-woo's shadow stretched wide apart and blocked him. Shannon and Han Ryeong were crossing their swords in an X shape to block him, their inferno sights ablaze. Who do you think you are? Ted tried to twist his body to take care of Shannon and Han Ryeong, who were getting in the way. Antius's holy power activated again, and a powerful strength whirled around the two. No, it tried to. At that moment, Ted's shadow unraveled like vines and wrapped around him. Monster portents that had suffered from him were attempting to bind him. Ted reflectively moved to shake them off. But he vomited at the stinging pain that suddenly flowed through his body. What is? Strange messages about his condition popped up. Ted usually didn't blink an eye at most poisons. He had never heard of a pure poison like this that was enough to dominate an apostle. He ripped apart the shadows with his holy power, thinking that he would be in even more danger, but Shannon and Han Ryeong quickly moved and stuck swords into his body. The poison spread throughout his body faster. The shadow tentacles gathered again and reached up to his chin. Cough. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't move. His body didn't listen to him. He felt like his heart and soul were bound by something he couldn't see. Above Yeon-woo's head, two lines were drawn and opened. They were blazing blue eyes. Eyes with fire that looked like hellfire were looking down at him. It was Boo's inferno sight. Nothing can approach Master without permission. Ted turned blank. He couldn't think of anything. Only one emotion filled his mind. Fear. Or horror. What was it? He felt like he was looking at someone a living person shouldn't see. Save me! Ted wanted to shout those words. He couldn't hear Antiochus's voice either. His holy power was tied up, not moving. He didn't even know what the shadows that struck their swords in him were. There was only one thing he could see. Death. Ted's shaking eyes fixed on Yeon-woo, but Yeon-woo just looked at him in amusement. Does it work on apostles too? I suppose it's because of Poseidon's blessing. This will be useful. With those words, Yeon-woo stretched his hand out towards Ted's face. Black aura flared up like fireworks on his fingertips. Ted's eyes didn't close until the end. He couldn't believe that he had lost without being able to even touch Yeon-woo. He felt wronged. And scared. Pug.